So in typical Land Rover fashion, we are very late setting off, and the reason is I managed to lose a bush off the front damper, and also I've got a binding rear prop shaft which I've cured by lathering the U-joint in ACF 50, and it appears to be working so far, but let's see how that holds up throughout the week. So in the last video I did a bit of an overview of the setup, but I never opened the roof tent. So I'm just showing you, this is a direct 4x4 hard shell roof tent, and the same tent is available from several different websites, but if you look at the actual makeup it's exactly the same, and the direct 4x4 one is much cheaper, so I think that's the one to go for. You can see that's a double sleeping bag, so the tent is a two-man tent. It's just over the size of a double bed, and it's perfect for a 90, and it's perfect for any off-roading rig really, because it folds down until it's barely noticeable. You'll see that later on in the video when we're going through some lanes, and being hard shell really is important to not getting damaged by trees and things like that. So here I had to show you the scenery, because this is the start of Strata Florida. You climb up through the forest, through the trees, and then it's spectacular, the views. You could never get tired of the views, and as much as we enjoy the hard obstacles, I think the views are just as spectacular. As you start to climb up Strata, you start to get a few more obstacles. See here, there's a bit of a rock step. No problems at all. I'm running a Gwen Lewis Challenge suspension kit, and I've got the centre diff lock engaged, and also an Ashcroft ATB in the rear, which just sends power to both rear wheels rather than the standard open diff that you get in the Defender. So I've not had any traction issues at all, and with the Gwen Lewis kit keeping the wheels on the ground all the time, I can't see any lane causing much of a challenge. So we actually bumped into a new friend, Dan. This is Dan. He's got a Cherokee, and he's kept it standard apart from fitting mud terrains, and he wanted to keep it standard for road use. He's actually come up from London, so quite a long trek to get here, and he rightly accepts that to keep that on-road driving characteristic the same, he's got to keep the suspension the same. So it's not caused him any problems so far, but later on when we get onto some more challenging stuff, you will see he does bottom out a couple of times, and that's just a sacrifice you have to make. More scenery now. Unfortunately, someone's decided that they don't like following the path. Perfectly good path, follow it, track's there, but they've decided they're going to drive into the river, and it's the sort of thing that gets lanes shut, unfortunately. So about halfway along we swapped over, give Dan a turn at leading, picking us a path, and I just followed behind. Dan set the pace. We've both got pretty similar ideas of what a reasonable pace is. This lane takes 2 or 3 hours to do, crawling in first and second gear as we are. You could do it much faster on a bike, I've no doubt, and you could do it much faster in a car, but you risk damaging something, and it's nice to enjoy the scenery. This part of the lane, so this obstacle here is probably one of the most famous ones. It's a steep descent into a bowl, and it's much steeper than it looks. A lot of these things don't really come out on camera, but you just see the 110 that caught up with us while we were just taking a look at the obstacle. She gets down there no problems, but she then drags the tow bar, and their friend in the 90, he again no problems getting down there, but you see he's got quite a big step on the back. He manages to bend his step and sort of drag the step and the tow bar again on the ground at the bottom, and just shows there it's deceptively steep. It's my turn next. You see there, again, it never looks too bad on camera, but that is a steep one, and I think I was hanging from the seatbelt there as I came over the top. Just to show, I could do it both ways. Ashcroft ATB in the rear, as I said, diff lock in the middle, good wheels kit, no problems at all. I don't think I even had any wheel slip there. And you just see in the background, Dan followed me up there, and he made it, but he did have a bit of a grounding out issue as he came over the crest. Now we've travelled through some lovely villages to arrive at our next lane. If you are Welsh, I apologise in advance, but I believe this lane is called Machynlleth Horseshoe, and it's one of the most famous lanes in Wales, and it's got a reputation for being quite difficult. At the minute, there's a temporary or a voluntary order on it to only drive it from one direction, which is what we did. So it's mostly downhill, and I can see why that is in place. If you were to go uphill, you would risk turning this lane up. So we're coming to the sort of obstacle that you expect to see on this lane, and we start to see the limitation in Dan's choice in going for an on-road bias setup. It's this lip is maybe a foot or two tall, but it's not made any easier by the fact that you're sort of cross-axled as you come up to it. So if you've got a limited articulation, it really is a challenge, and he ended up having to sort of bump up it a little bit quicker than probably he wanted to, but he got up there in the end. And you'll see here another problem as we descended the rocky steps. Dan just got bottomed out, and that's just the way it is. That's the sacrifice you make again. These Jeeps have got quite a low transmission cross member, and that's what he bottomed out on. I had to give him a bit of a pull. And a lot of this lane is at quite a steep angle. It seems to change, and this doesn't look too extreme on camera, but in the car it really does feel like you're on the verge of tipping over. I know that I'm not, but in areas it does feel steep. And also the transition, there's no flat parts of the lane, so it's a transition from leaning one way to the other, and that transition is quite stomach churning if you're not expecting it, and if you've got limited articulation on the suspension. Again, see here I'm leaning the other way, and the transition back to the opposite direction, you just see the back wheel there, how articulate the suspension is. This section is another section that you see on YouTube a lot. You usually see people going the other way, which unfortunately at the minute we can't do that. But again, it's a near vertical lip, and I didn't have a problem. Again, 90, short wheelbase, good angles, good suspension kit, but Dan again, ground clearance issue, and this is one of the few times I would say that you need a lift kit on a green lane. There was nothing he could do, bottomed out, so we jacked the back of the car up, put some rocks under there, and he was able to drive out under his own power. The next option would have been, of course, just to pull him off there, but we didn't want to drag the transmission along the rocks. These rocks are very sharp, so we decided to just spend a little bit of time and try and stack some rocks up. You can see there at the bottom of the lane, or the bottom of the descent, someone's already stacked up some rocks to try and help. So he decided he was going to aim for the rocks, but still it wasn't easy. This lane is not easy, and you'll see now, even now you can see his wheels off the floor. He's teetering on two wheels, and it gets to the point where he's now beached on the back end of the car. You can see the front bumper is just above the ground, and there's no option but to put his foot down, and that's exactly what he does. So this again is the one occasion where a little bit of right foot is the only thing that's going to get you through it, and he's just rested on the back of the car now, and you see puts his foot down and he loses exhaust in the process. And that's it. It's a real shame that that's the end of the laning. We set off home the next day after sleeping in the tent again. and of course we had to stop off at the place where all good green laning journeys begin and end. That's McDonald's, and we stopped off for a burger on the way home as we headed back to England. That's all we've got time for on this video, but I want to keep up this content, keep the laning, do some more maybe garage work, modification work, and more in-depth work on the car if that's something people want to see. But if you subscribe, there'll be more videos to come.